Broc Feeney is in talks to join Kaulig Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Cam Waters is expected to join the NASCAR Cup Series at Chicago along with Will Brown, and Chris Buescher has been handed a pretty massive penalty. What's going on, guys? This is Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Jimmie Johnson's 2025 Carvana scheme that we're going to see at the Coca-Cola 600. I think Legacy knocked this one out of the park, and I love a different look to it. You've got a yellowish tint to the number. It looks really awesome, and I think Legacy Motor Club knocked this one out of the park. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Lang Ray's 2025 UNC Charlotte scheme that we'll see next weekend at Charlotte. I really like this paint scheme. I think the colors on it work really well. You've got good sponsorship on it as well. It looks really nice. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is William Byers' 2025 Exalta Patriota scheme that we'll see at the Coca-Cola 600. This is one of my favorite Patriota schemes we've seen so far this year. I think the colors work very well on this one. It's very patriotic. It looks fantastic. Looks amazing. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Charlotte. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Taylor Gray's 2025 Operation 300 Patriota scheme that we'll see at Charlotte and also Chicago Street Course. This one looks really good in my opinion. I think this one is actually a better looking one than we've seen his other scheme. I think this one looks nice. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Charlotte. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Joey Logano's 2025 Pennzoil scheme that we'll see at the Coca-Cola 600. I love the simplicity of the scheme. It looks really awesome. I think Team Penske knocked this one out of the park. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack next week. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Justin Allgaier's 2025 Helmets Patriota scheme that we'll see at Charlotte. Looks great. Junior Motorsports knocked this one out of the park. The colors work very nice, and Junior Motorsports did another good job on another scheme. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Ellis's 2025 Zero scheme that we'll see at Charlotte. This one is one of my favorite ones I think I've seen so far this year when it comes to patriotic ones. I think this one looks really good. I think the Junior Motorsports generally knocked this one out of the park. Not Junior Motorsports. The team knocked this one out of the park, DJM Racing. It looks really, really good. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chase Briscoe's 2025 Bassler Shots Patriota scheme that we'll see at Charlotte. This is a little bit of a downgrade from the ones Martrix Jr.'s had in the past, but I do think this one actually does look pretty good. I think Joe Gibbs did a solid job on this one, but it's not as good as the ones Martrix Jr. has had in the past. The next main scheme we're taking a look at is Michael McDowell's 2025 Veterans 1001 scheme that we'll see at Charlotte. I like this one quite a bit in all honesty. I think Spire's had some good ones this year. They've also had some ones that have not been great, but I think this one actually works really well, and it's going to be a nice looking car out on the track at Charlotte. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Carson Quaffel's 2025 Fiesel Roofing scheme that we'll see in 2 races in 2025. This one's certainly interesting. It's nice to see a new sponsor working with Carson Quaffel this year. It does look solid, but it's not my favorite Junior Motorsports scheme we've seen so far. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Austin Dillon's 2025 Dow Salutes Veteran scheme that we'll see at North Wilkesboro. I'm a little surprised they're not running this one for the Coca-Cola 600, but there's nothing wrong with it. I actually think it does look pretty good, and it's going to be a nice car to see out on the track at North Wilkesboro. The next main scheme we're taking a look at is Christian Eckes' 2025 Campers Patriota scheme that we'll see at Charlotte. There's not much different from other camper schemes, to be honest. The only thing you've got is like stars and stripes on it. It does look solid, though. I think the Campers RV car has looked solid in the past. The next main scheme we're taking a look at is Jeff Burton's 2025 Timber Creek scheme that we'll see at Charlotte. This one does look really good. I like that a new company is coming in and sponsoring Jeff Burton this year. It does look solid overall, and it'll definitely be a good-looking scheme out on the track at Charlotte. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ryan Blaney's 2025 Body Armor scheme that we'll see at the Coca-Cola 600. I think this is one of the best body armor schemes that I've seen so far this year that has been leaked. The blue, the red number, everything about the scheme does look really good. I think they absolutely nailed this one. Definitely looking forward to seeing on the racetrack next weekend at the Coca-Cola 600. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the All-Star Race purses. So every time you have a NASCAR Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series race, Bob Pockets puts out the purse money for the event. And according to Bob, for the All-Star Race, the main event, it's $2,421,400. For the Open Race, it's $581,100. And for the Truck Series race, it's $782,900. So for the first time this year, there's at least a Truck Series thing that has got more than a Cup Series event, even though the Open really doesn't fully matter when it comes to the money. Obviously, the All-Star purse is a little bit up this year compared to prior years, I'm pretty sure. I do think that the winner of the race should get all that money, in all honesty. The $2.5 million is what the number should be, but I do think the purse money for this weekend is solid. It's not fantastic by any stretch of the imagination, but I think for all series, it is definitely decent, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Shady Rays. As it was announced earlier today, the Shady Rays will be partnering with 23XI Racing in select races in 2025. They are going to have an entitlement deal with the organization this year. They, I believe, are going to have paint schemes throughout the year as well. Shady Rays has had associations with multiple drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series this year. They, of course, have sponsored Kyle Busch in 2025 as doing an endorsement deal, and we also know they're probably going to have a primary scheme for Bubba Wallace at some point this year. This is a really big deal. Shady Rays coming on and being a sponsor is a massive deal for the company over there at 23XI, considering there's a lot of uncertainty of where the organization is going to be in 2026, but it's awesome to see that Shady Rays is stepping up and partnering with 23XI Racing in 2025. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Starkish Charlie. As it was announced earlier this afternoon, the Starkish Charlie has officially announced a partnership with Kyle Busch and also Bresson Busch as well. They are going to be on Bresson Busch's car when he races in late models or whatever series he races in, whether it's dirt. They will be on the car for him throughout the season. Now, I don't think they're going to be as a sponsor for Kyle Busch. I think Kyle Busch is pretty much sold out on sponsorship for the 2025 season with Sennex coming on board this weekend. But I think it's a big deal for the team, right, to have Starkish Charlie coming on and working with the organization. Because down the road, I could see this leading to a potential primary sponsorship for the organization down the road and for Kyle Busch as well with Richard Childress Racing. I think it's still a really, really big deal, and it's pretty exciting nonetheless to see that Starkish Charlie will be doing a partnership with Kyle Busch this year. I'm very intrigued to see down the road if it could lead to some stuff in NASCAR in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Derek White. As it was confirmed earlier this evening by Joseph Strigley that Derek White will drive the number 2 truck for the Raymond Brothers Racing this weekend at North Wilkesboro. Derek White, I believe, had been banned from NASCAR for some stuff happening up in Canada, I'm pretty sure, a couple of years back. But in recent years, he's been granted back in. I think there's been some stuff that's happened for him that's been good behind the scenes that is giving him a chance and opportunity to drive for the team. Realistically, I don't think Derek White is going to be a factor at all. I'm not saying Derek White can't drive a race car. I just think with Rayum and the team's uncertainty and them not being one of the fastest organizations out there, I just don't really have any expectations and confidence that they are going to be very, very good. I'd love to see Derek White show some good speed, but again, I just don't expect much to happen for this team. They're not going to be fast. I think they're not going to be quick, and I think Derek White unfortunately ends up struggling at the event this weekend at North Wilkesboro in the Craftsman Truck Series, but pretty interesting that he's back in the Truck Series this year with the Raymond brothers. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the NFL schedule in NASCAR. As it was announced a couple days ago on Wednesday night that the NFL schedule for every single team has been officially unveiled for the 2025 to 2026 NFL season. So there's 5 conflicting dates that come into play. So when NASCAR does race in Loudon, there is going to be conflicting with the Patriots. Now keep in mind, Loudon is in New Hampshire, and of course the New England Patriots do play in Boston, Massachusetts. So I don't think that's going to play a major factor. The New England team is part of a lot of different parts of the country in the East. When they go to Kansas, of course, the Chiefs will be playing at home. This is unfortunate. I think that could affect attendance for the playoff event. I do think it's going to be a night game, though, potentially. I didn't look at the schedule fully, but we'll see the Chiefs playing conflicting against the NASCAR Cup playoff date. For Charlotte, the Panthers are going to be in town. I don't think many people are going to go to the Panthers game. Let's be honest, the Panthers are not that good of an organization and team, and they're probably going to struggle. Las Vegas will have the Raiders playing at home. They're going to be playing, I think, in the evening, though, I'm pretty sure. So that shouldn't be a major issue. And for Phoenix for the championship race, they will be playing, I believe, at home, but it won't be till Monday night. So it won't affect the championship event, which I think is a positive. So overall, there's always the NFL conflicts that do come up. I don't think any other games are going to be conflicting throughout the year with them being in that same market. I think this is certainly interesting. I think it's the first time we've seen more than 1 or 2 conflicting things going on. It seems like the NFL is trying to get everything that they can at this point to try to be the biggest thing at the moment. But right now, I think it's certainly interesting on the NFL schedule and NASCAR's conflictions for 2025 and 2026. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about IndyCar. As it was announced yesterday morning that IndyCar has officially announced some new start times for 5 IndyCar races in 2025. Starting off with Worldwide Technology Raceway. The event will move from 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, making the race a Sunday night event. For Road America, which I believe is a week or two after that, it moves from 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For Mid-Ohio, it moves from 2 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For Iowa, for the second race, the first race remains the same. The second race will move from 2 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And finally, for Toronto, it goes from 2 p.m. Eastern to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is basically to try to not have any conflictions with NASCAR, mainly Worldwide Technology, for example. You've got a massive event going on, which is going to be in Mexico City. You don't want the Mexico City race to be overshadowed by the race that's happening in Worldwide Technology, and there's a lot of IndyCar fans that are really invested in tuning in to the race that's happening at Mexico City. Plus, you do have the Canadian Grand Prix, I believe, that's going on during the same weekend as well. So you do have a lot of IndyCar fans who are also Formula One fans. So you don't want that confliction going on this year. I think this is actually a really good change, and I think this is a massive win for IndyCar because you don't want that confliction going on, especially for the race. Plus, I think making the Gateway a night race, that is a massive thumbs up. I think Gateway should have been a night race from the get-go, and I think it's a massive deal to see that the Gateway IndyCar race will become a night race this year. I think it should have happened before, but I'm glad to see that race has moved to a night race in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tom Brady. As it was officially confirmed yesterday by Indy Star's Nathan Brown in IndyCar as well, that Tom Brady will join Jimmy Johnson in the 2-seater for the 2025 Indianapolis 500. This is going to be the first time that the 2-seater has come out since 2019. Now, we're going to talk about the Indy 500 broadcast team here in just a short little bit, but there's been rumors and speculation. I believe that Tony Donahue had originally reported, who of course is part of the Unverified podcast with David Land. He kind of reported this about 2 or 3 weeks ago. This likely was going to happen, and now it's officially confirmed. This is a Fox decision. Tom Brady, of course, going to Indianapolis is certainly interesting, considering he did have a rivalry with the Indianapolis Colts when it comes to the NFL. But I think it's still a really big deal that Tom Brady is getting involved. There was a lot of rumors and speculation that Tom Brady and Jimmy Johnson were going to partner up to field the ride for Sebastian Bourdais, I believe about a month or so ago. That basically got confirmed that was not happening. There were talks and conversations about that. And of course, we know Jimmy Johnson is also going to be focused on trying to win the Coca-Cola 600 this year in his 700 star. I don't believe anyone's ever won in their 700 star. If they have, let me know in the comments. But this is still a really big deal to see that Tom Brady is coming to the Indy 500. I know that they're doing a lot of stuff. You've got Gronkowski going to the snake pit. So I think you've got a lot of really exciting things happening with this year's Indy 500. And say what you want to say about Fox, they're pulling all the stops in all the ways to try to make it a big event overall. So I think I'm really excited about this overall to see that Tom Brady's coming over. I know it's a Fox decision, but I think it's still a big win that they're going to be having him come over and do some stuff with IndyCar in 2025. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chase Elliott. And we got a couple Elliott stories to talk about today on the channel. But first of all is around something that was announced yesterday, as Chase Elliott is going to run the late model race at Hickory Speedway next Thursday on May 22nd. He is going to drive the freight auctions car that he generally runs for one of the organizations down there. I think Chase Elliott running events like this is really big for the sport. And Chase Elliott, of course, does have a lot of experience racing in late models. He, of course, won the Snowball Derby, I believe, back in 2011 or 2012. And he's always been really good at late model racing in the past. And of course, it's kind of a little bit translated to the next-gen car, even though Chase Elliott has struggled in the next-gen. But getting the on-track experience could really help Chase Elliott in a big way, considering the Coca-Cola 600 is coming up very, very soon, and that is approaching very, very quickly. So getting that experience in Hickory is going to be a big deal. I think he will be a major, major factor for the win at Hickory. We don't know all the drivers that are going to be competing in that event, but I'm excited to see that he's coming back to race in some late model events. I think, again, the on-track experience, I get the late models are not entirely similar to next-gen cars in some ways, but at the same time, when you do have the experience to get behind the wheel, you want to form very, very good. I think he will be a major factor and a strong contender in these late model events. Glad to see him doing something different in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chase Elliott and Justin Haley. as there was a report by Bob Pockrass earlier today that Chase Elliott and Justin Haley have officially swapped rear tire changes for the remainder of 2025, effective immediately, and it will begin this weekend at the All-Star race. So the 5-tire changer that had been working with Justin Haley this year, he'll move over to work with Chase Elliott for the remainder of the year, while Chase Elliott's rear tire changer will move away from Chase and work over with Justin Haley in 2025. This is now the second time that Justin Haley's had a new pit crew for this year in some way, shape, or form. Now, why are they making this change? Well, Chase Elliott had a really strong chance and opportunity to win the NASCAR Cup Series race at Kansas Speedway. On the long run, in my opinion, I think that 9 car was the fastest car on the racetrack. Unfortunately, on the second to last pit stops of the event, when the pit stops were very crucial at that point, Chase Elliott's pit crew really crapped the bed and they messed up on the right rear. Chase Elliott has not had overall the best pace and speed at times this year, especially on a long run. So to have a car as good as he did, that was really irritating to see him lose the race because of that. And his pit crew really screwed up is unacceptable on standards. That's why they're making this move. I get that some people don't overall like the fact that the pit crews keep changing, but I think for Chase Elliott, there's a lot of high expectations and a lot of people are wanting to see Chase Elliott have a lot of success. And when you have a car as good as Chase Elliott did on the long run, if your team really screws the bed and doesn't do a good job, there's a very good chance and possibility that you're probably going to get canned or moved to another position in the team. He's still going to be part of Hendrick Motorsports in some way, shape, or form, Aspire Motorsports connection over there, but at the same token, same time, I think this is definitely not shocking and surprising to see that they're making this move, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Alex Palou. Now, over the last couple months or so, there has been a ton of talk and conversation around Alex Palou being a potential candidate for the Cadillac F1 program that is going to be debuting in 2026. And with him being dominant IndyCar and pretty much accomplishing everything outside of winning the Indy 500 at this point, there's a lot of people been asking him, are you going to eventually go to Formula 1? Well, Alex Palou has pretty much confirmed and ruled himself out and says he is not planning to join Formula 1 and join the Cadillac program in 2026. He is appreciative of the fans that do want to see him go and do it, but he says right now the plan is still be focused on IndyCar and have a home in the States. I can honestly respect that from Alex Palou. He is dominating IndyCar currently at the moment right now. He's won 4 of the first 5 races, and with the speed he's shown so far at the Indy 500 is very realistic. He could win 5 of the first 6 races this year and clinch a championship very early. What I worry about if he was to go to Formula 1 is I think there would be a good chance he would struggle immensely because we're not sure how the Cadillac team is going to be. I think Alex Palou is one of the best drivers, but the equipment matters so much in Formula 1 currently at the moment that even if you're a great driver, if the equipment isn't good, you're not going to perform very well. He's driving for Chip Ganassi Racing, the fastest team in IndyCar currently at the moment right now. So I think staying in IndyCar for the long term does make a lot of sense, and I think it's absolutely respectful that he wants to stay in a series where he's having a lot of success currently at this particular moment. I think it'd be cool down the road to see him go to Formula 1, but I think right now it's not going to happen. I think he's going to stay in IndyCar. Plus, he's starting to get up to that point in age where it's going to be almost impossible at that point because I do think once you get up to that 30, 40, it's going to be hard to get there, and he's 28 years old currently at the moment. So I think a few years ago that would have been the opportunity, but as of right now, he's planning to stay in IndyCar, which I think is very respectful on his standards, and I think he deserves to be in IndyCar long term. I think he's going to make a lot of history, and I think he's going to break a lot of records within the next couple of years. If he doesn't get it this year, I think he will win an Indy 500. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about RFK Racing. Now, yesterday, RFK Racing put out that they are going to be having their fan day on May 23rd. But one thing that they kind of tease is that it sounds like there might be a major partnership announcement that is going to be announced a week from today when you're watching this video on May 23rd. And it seems like it's going to be under that car that is going to be unveiled. Now, we don't exactly know what this is going to be. Could this be a new sponsor coming in and taking over for Kroger? I don't think so. I think Kroger is actually really happy working RFK Racing. Yes, RFK Racing the last couple weeks has had a lot of bad luck, unfortunately, but I don't see it being something around RFK Racing losing a big sponsor. It could be a new sponsor coming in to work with the team. Could this be the potential possibility of Cam Waters? We have heard through the grapevine that Cam Waters is expected. We're going to talk about the story here in a little bit. But we've heard that Cam Waters is expected to join RFK Racing at the Chicago Street Course this year. And a lot of the Australian guys are going to be coming over this year as well. So that could be the potential possibility. Something around Bill Submarines teaming up for that. That could certainly be interesting because we know Chicago's in about a month or so from now. That's what I'm thinking currently at the moment. But it could be something else. It could be something involving the team, growing, maybe having a technical alliance and increasing her technical alliance with the Haas factory team. The Haas factory team does have a technical alliance at RFK, but could this be an increase of that technical alliance? I think that is certainly a possibility, or could it be something around the lawsuit that's happening with Legacy right now, Rick Ware? I'm not really sure at this point, but I certainly think when it does get announced, we're going to cover here on the channel, and I think it could definitely be something to watch out for as time progresses and goes on. I think there's definitely something to keep an eye on this story, though. We'll keep an eye on it definitely as time progresses and goes on. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Indy 500. As it was announced earlier today that the Indy 500 broadcast team has been officially confirmed, and we're going to mainly talk about the people who are on the pre-race show. So Chris Myers is going to be the host commentator, the host of the pre-race, while Danica Patrick and Tony Stewart are going to be basically doing a lot of the stuff and bringing analysis going into the event. Now, obviously, there's a lot of controversy around Danica Patrick being in the booth, considering Danica Patrick has been part of the Formula One broadcast in the last couple of years, and I gotta be real and honest, her time in Sky Sports, she should not be doing it, but she does have experience being in IndyCar, so, and having success in Indy 500 in some way, shape, or form. I mean, she did get a podium finish about 15 or 16 years ago, so that says something. Back in 2009, she finished in 3rd position. I think there's a lot of frustration, though, because Danica has not been active in racing recently, so I think a lot of people are looking at this and saying, oh, she's there because Fox wanted her. As for Tony Stewart, he makes a lot of sense. He's no longer affiliated with a NASCAR. He's been interested in doing some Indy stuff. I know he's not going to do an Indy 500, but there's been rumors he was going to come back to IndyCar in some way, shape, or form a few years ago, if I remember correctly. I think it's great to see him. He's going to be doing some pre-race stuff. Tony Stewart's done some stuff with Fox on the NASCAR side, did some co-commentary for that. And also, Tony Stewart's nearly won the Indy 500 in the past. He almost won as a rookie in 96 and had a chance to win in 2001 when he did the double. So I think that this is actually a really solid broadcast booth for 2025. Well, not the broadcast booth. It's still going to be Will Buxton, James Hinchcliffe, and, of course, Townsend Bell. But I think that the group for the pre-race stuff, I think that's going to be interesting. As for other people, Tom Rinaldi and Aaron Andrews, they're going to be doing a lot of the driver interviews and the one-on-one interviews. No surprise, they've both been part of Fox for many years. Tom Rinaldi does some stuff on the NASCAR side, and Aaron Andrews, about 10 or 11 years ago, did some stuff on the NASCAR side for the 2013 Daytona 500. Overall, I think this is a solid broadcast group outside of maybe Danica, in all honesty. But I don't think Danica's the worst person there, I will say. But I don't agree with her being there fully. I don't think, though, she's the worst to be there, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Junior Motorsports. Now, earlier today, Junior Motorsports put out a really cool and really interesting video showing all the drivers who've already been announced that are driving full-time for Junior Motorsports or making select starts for the team. We saw Shane Van Gisbergen in the video, Ross Chastain in the video, Connor Zilch. It's like a choose-your-character thing you see in a video game, but there's actually one that I noticed today where it actually showed that there might be a new unlockable car and a new driver coming in. So what this tells me is that there might be a new driver driving for Junior Motorsports at some point in 2025. One of my theories is it could be Daniel Suarez, considering you do have the other Trackhouse drivers of Ross Chastain and Shane Van Gisbergen. I think that is certainly a possibility. What if it's that rumor of Broc Feeney coming in, though we've heard Kaulig Racing is likely. It could be Broc Feeney. It could be someone from the short track scene, like Connor Hall, who's driving full-time for Junior Motorsports in the late model scene, the Cars Tour currently at the moment. So those could be some potential possibilities. But you obviously got the number 9 car. That's the number that is being used currently at the moment. The other one that I think about is Raja Karuf. We've heard rumors that Raja might make some starts in the number 17 Hendrick Motorsports car, but we've also heard that he might be making some starts for Junior Motorsports in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year, considering that it seems like Hendrick's not as fully affiliated with Raja as we thought. Of course, he's driving full-time for Spire Motorsports. We've heard rumors that Spire also might field a 4th part-time Cup car at some point this year. At the beginning of the year, there's been a lot of talk about that, but they haven't fielded that 4th car at this time. But I think it's certainly going to be interesting on who Junior Motorsports decides to put behind the wheel. I'm leaning toward it being like a Connor Hall perhaps at this time, maybe like for a short track that has been announced. We're just going to have to wait and see, but I do think it's cool that it sounds like we might be getting a new driver for Junior Motorsports at some way, shape, or form very, very soon. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen. Now, I believe earlier this week, Bozy Tatarevic wrote up an article on the VA Sloop page. And he talked to Shane Van Gisbergen about the struggles in the NASCAR Cup Series so far. And he basically says, and one of the reasons that Shane says that he's been struggling in the NASCAR Cup Series is due to the lack of practice that happens on the racetrack for the NASCAR Cup Series. He says that 15 to 20 minutes of practice is not enough to get me up to speed, and he's having a hard time adjusting to the next-gen car. Shane Van Gisbergen, we know, has really struggled in the NASCAR Cup Series this year. Outside of some really solid runs, of course, having a top 10 finish at Coda, where Les really probably should have been up there competing with Kyle Busch and those guys up front for the win, but his car was really terrible on the short run, and his restarts were not very good. But outside of that, and a couple other good runs, like a top 20 run in Darlington, it's generally been a rough year for Shane Van Gisbergen this year. I've said this for a while. I do think a lot of these younger rookies, like Shane Van Gisbergen, like Riley Herbst, said the same thing with Catherine Legge as well. I think there needs to be more practice in the NASCAR Cup Series, but I think practice in general is needed for the younger drivers as well. I think a lot of rookies that eventually do make their way up to the NASCAR Cup Series down the road, they are going to struggle like Shane Van Gisbergen has. There's obviously a lot of talk that he may not even be in the seat next year, which I think he will be in the seat more than likely, but I think it's more of a his decision than anything else. But I don't want to see Shane Van Gisbergen continue to struggle. And I think that as the season progresses and goes on, I think he's going to figure it out. The same thing I said with Haley Deegan a few years ago. I think the lack of practice has really affected her. But it's not just affected drivers that are young. Think about Kyle Busch, for example. Kyle Busch has really struggled with the lack of practice in recent years. When we had a lot of practice, like back in 2019, Kyle Busch was dominant. He won a lot of races in that 2015 to 2019 stretch. But since they went to no practice or lack of practice in 2020, Kyle Busch has won like 5 or 6 races. He has not won a lot of races in recent years. So I think the simplest thing the NASCAR could do to fix a lot of these issues and problems is add more practice. Are they going to do that, though? Honestly, I don't think so. I think NASCAR is so consistent on that. Look at Kyle Busch. He ran 50 minutes of practice at Coda, and guess what? He had the fastest car in the field. I think if Kyle Busch gets a lot more practice, he will be a lot more competitive. I think we need more practice on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule, and the sooner we can add a lot more practice to the schedule, I think it's going to be better for everybody. I hope we do get more practice down the road. I know the teams are really against adding practice, but I think for the sport to be better positioned, there needs to be more practice. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dale Jr. Now, earlier tonight, during the Cars Tour events that were going on with the PLM race that was happening, Dale Jr., of course, was in on the broadcast booth for that with Eric Brennan and Kevin Harvick. And Dale Jr. did confirm on the broadcast booth saying that if NASCAR announces a North Wilkesboro for the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at North Wilkesboro in 2026, he says he will add that race to his schedule and race in that Xfinity Series race in 2026. Obviously, the Xfinity Series is the only top-tier series of NASCAR's top 3 divisions that currently does not race there. The Truck Series, of course, is racing there this weekend. We all thought maybe Junior, well, we didn't think about it, but I think it'd be cool to see Dale Jr. run the North Wilkesboro Truck event. But I think the Xfinity Series needs to be racing at North Wilkesboro. It frustrates me that the Cup Series, they get their All-Star event there. I think a points paint race would be really cool for the Cup Series. But it frustrates me that the Cup Series cannot have a points paint event there. And it also frustrates me that the Xfinity Series has never raced there in the 40 to 43 year history of the series. They never raced at North Wilkesboro. So the Truck Series ran there once or twice before returning in 2023. And the Cup Series ran there for many years. But the Xfinity Series has never raced there. I think you think about the Cup cars. We know the Cup cars have really been bad on short tracks. The Xfinity Series, when they're not wrecking each other at short tracks, it's sometimes some of the best and most fantastic racing out there. We've heard drivers like Kyle Larson praise the Xfinity Series car, who we're going to talk about here in just a short little bit. But I really think that the Xfinity Series needs to be racing at North Wilkesboro. And I think the fact that Dale Jr. is clamoring for that tells me that NASCAR might announce it for 2025. And I think it absolutely needs to happen. And maybe take away, or 26, I should say. And honestly, take one of the road course dates away at this point. Maybe they take Portland away in 2026. I don't know what the future of Portland looks like for the Xfinity schedule. The racing's really good up there. I just don't know if that's going to continue past this year with how many Xfinity road courses are on the schedule. But I think North Wilkesboro needs to be on the schedule for the Xfinity Series. I think all 3 series should have points paint events at this point. And I know there's a lot of talk about Rockingham too, maybe for the Cup Series down the road, but we're not focusing on that. We're mainly focusing on Dale Jr. and his opportunity if it happens. And I want to see Dale Jr. make more Xfinity Series starts. Dale Jr. says he doesn't have a lot more opportunities to compete in NASCAR at this point. He just turned 50 years old last year, and once you start getting up there in age, you just start losing a lot of that performance. So I think Dale Jr. is running out of years of opportunities to race. And if they do find a way to get North Wilkesboro on the Xfinity schedule, I think a lot of fans like myself will be very, very happy. happy. So we'll see what happens in regards to this down the road, but it sounds like Dale Jr. is clamoring for it, and if it does happen, I'll be very happy if we see North Wilkesboro on the schedule. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, earlier today, Jeff Gluck released a 12 questions that he does pretty much every single week with certain drivers in NASCAR, IndyCar, and other forms of racing as well. He actually has one that's coming out with Alex Plo next week. But it's mainly focused around Kyle Larson. And there's one question that got a little bit of attraction earlier, and this revolves around Kyle Larson's commitment to NASCAR. Now, over the years, there's been a lot of talk and conversation around Kyle Larson not being fully committed to NASCAR, saying that it's just a money grab for him, and he doesn't really care about racing in NASCAR at the moment. He cares more about racing in dirt than he does racing in NASCAR. Well, Kyle Larson pretty much confirmed that he is still very committed to NASCAR. He says it's not true that he's not committed to the sport, and he still loves racing in NASCAR and wants to continue racing in NASCAR, at least for the foreseeable future. Kyle Larson, obviously, we know, is really involved in dirt racing currently at the moment. He runs a high-limit series, and you definitely could tell that he does have a lot of fun racing a high-limit and racing in dirt as well. And I think he really is enjoying his time running the Indy 500 once again this year. But Kyle Larson, we know, is having a lot of fun with it. When he dominates races, he probably has a lot of fun. When he went down the Xfinity Series and put up a dominant finish, he did have a lot of fun racing in that event. I think Larson, obviously, there's a lot of rumors and speculation for years, but many people do believe that Kyle Larson is going to pull a Carl Edwards at some point in the future where he's going to leave the sport early and go focus on dirt racing. Kyle Larson's contract with Hendrick Motorsports only right now goes through 2026, but I do think Kyle Larson is going to sign an extension with Hendrick Motorsports probably through the end of the decade more than likely, which at that point he will have been in the sport for nearly 20 years and will turn 38 years old in 2030. So maybe by 2030 he retires and goes and does dirt racing, but I think Larson honestly has 7-8 years left in his NASCAR Cup career. If Kyle Larson does stay till he's 40 years old, which is 8 years from now at this point, or 7 years from now, I should say, Kyle Larson, if he can win 5 to 6 races a year, he could get up to around 60 to 65 wins. I don't know what Kyle Larson's long-term goal is on the wins total and the championship total, but I think Kyle Larson does want to win a lot of races. He probably wants to get at least 50 wins, get more wins than Tony Stewart. Tony Stewart got 49 in the NASCAR Cup Series, so he probably wants to win more than Tony Stewart at this point. But I think Kyle Larson has a lot of commitment and does care about racing in the sport. I think that he just doesn't always show it. But I think he is going to be one of the best drivers ever. He's already one of the best drivers in NASCAR Cup history. He's in the second or third category on all time. You've got the all-time greats. You've got some of the best ever. And then you have Larson who's in that third group who, in my opinion, are some of the best that are to that next level. But he's getting to that next level. He's dominating races. He's one of only 22 drivers who's led 10,000 laps in NASCAR Cup history. And I think that he is still very committed. I know he's not always showing it when he does show it on his face, but Larson does care about the sport. He wants to continue racing in the sport long term. He's had a lot of success for many years. He's going to continue having success, and I think he's going to continue doing great things in the sport long term. I think Larson won't be going anywhere anytime soon. I think we'll see in the sport for the long term and the foreseeable future, in my honest opinion, as I think he will be committed for many years to come. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kansas Speedway. Now, we do know that NASCAR recently announced a new championship rotation that's going to be starting in 2026 with Homestead Miami Speedway being the first date that's been confirmed for that rotation. Another track we know that's been confirmed is Phoenix Raceway, who will host a race in the round of 8 in 26, I should say, or 27, 28. But there's a lot of other tracks that many people have been kind of speculating about that could down the road host a championship race. And one track that's been brought up as a potential possibility is Kansas Speedway. And there was an article that came out from a Kansas area that kind of talk about the championship event. Now, one thing that we do need to correct on their post, they did say it would be a third race at Kansas Speedway. That is not correct. It would just be that the Kansas race would actually move to a little bit later in the year to be the championship event. If it is the only race part of the championship, even though there is talk there might be a championship rotation of a final few races instead of just one race there, and you have one race be the final race. But Kansas is clamoring for that. They are hoping down the road to get a championship race because they are looking to build a Buc-ee's in that area, and they feel like a Buc-ee's could be a really big reason why they get the championship race. Now, I don't really think a Buc-ee's. Look, I've never been to Buc-ee's, but I've heard a lot of great things about Buc-ee's. I don't think Bucky should be the reason that Kansas gets the championship race. It'd be the most redneck thing probably ever if it happened, but I don't see Bucky's being fully the reason why they would get the championship race. To me, Kansas does fit the criteria, though, to host a championship event, and I would absolutely love to see Kansas Speedway get the chance and opportunity to host a championship race because, one, in my opinion, I know that this year's race wasn't as strong as other Kansas races, but Kansas Speedway generally with the next-gen car has raced very, very good. It's been one of the best tracks, and it always puts on a fantastic and great show. Also, the Xfinity Series and Truck Series, they do the same thing. The racing's great. The track is in a very good location. Kansas City is not that far away from this racetrack. It's in a big market. You have the Kansas City Chiefs Stadium that's not far out from the track. You've also got a lot of amenities that have been updated at the track, and from what I've heard, it's one of the better facilities that NASCAR has currently got at the moment. They keep it up to date, and they keep bringing a lot of fresh ideas to the racetrack. So I really hope that Kansas down the road gets part of that rotation. The one thing that is a big concern is the weather, and there are some questions about the weather in November, but if you can have this race in the season end in late October down the road, which I think that's something that I've been saying, is I think the season, there's a way you can probably end the season a little bit earlier in the year than having it in the second week in November down the road, maybe having a couple double headers so you can find a way to get Kansas as that season finale. But I really think that Kansas down the road should be the season finale because the track I think will be fantastic and great. But again, talk about the Bucky stuff, I just don't think Bucky's would be the reason that it would be the championship race. It'd be cool if that was the reason, but I personally don't think that's going to be the reason that Kansas will be the championship race if it does end up getting the championship race down the road. I'd love for it to be. We'll just have to wait and see if it does down the road end up being the championship race in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Justin Allgaier, as it was officially confirmed yesterday that Justin Allgaier will be the reserve driver for Kyle Larson during All-Star Race Weekend and also the Coca-Cola 600 as well. It was confirmed also earlier today as well that they will not be attempting to race in the heat events. They are going to practice and qualify the car later today when you're watching this, but they will not be going ahead and going out to the track during the heat races. They are going to start last in the event. Now, Justin Allgaier, of course, will be behind the wheel if Kyle Larson does have some travel issues coming back from the All-Star racing after the Indy 500 qualifying, which is going to be there all day Saturday. He, of course, will come if they have issues traveling back. Justin Allgaier will start the car, and only the car has to start. This isn't the same situation for the Coca-Cola 600. If, of course, Kyle Larson does have issues getting back from the Coca-Cola 600, Justin Allgaier would be the driver that would start the race. For people saying to talk about Allgaier being the reserve driver, honestly, I think this actually is a really good choice for that, and here is why. Justin Allgaier drove this car last year at the Coke 600, and he actually did a really, really good job. He finished 13th in the race, had really good pace and really strong speed for someone who's really never raced an action car in his career, if ever. And he generally did a really good job behind the wheel. And he's been really strong in the last year or so. He won the championship in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024. He also, of course, ran the Daytona 500 with Junior Motorsports, qualified for the event, and finished inside the top 10 in 9th place for the first start for Junior Motorsports. And then you think about Xfinity this year. He's up by 50 points in the championship currently at the moment right now, and Justin Allgaier is probably the favorite at the moment to go back-to-back and win the Xfinity Championship, which would be the first time someone has gone back-to-back since Tyler Reddick did it back in 2018 and 2019, if, of course, he does win that championship. But I think Allgaier is a perfect choice. Would have been really cool to see Carl Edwards get the chance and opportunity to come back and drive that car just for the All-Star weekend. 100%. We know that Carl Edwards, there's a lot of people always ask, like myself, that want to see Carl Edwards come back to the sport. But at the same time, it's understandable why Carl Edwards doesn't want to come back and be fully committed to it, even though I think he should get a little bit of experience in the next-gen car. Whether that is a practice session or not, that is to be determined. But I think getting experience in that car, in my opinion, is very, very important. But I think at the same time, Justin Allgaier is a clear, perfect choice. He's a really solid choice, in my opinion, for that. And I think that again, some are going to disagree, and that's fine. But at the same time, I think it's very important they choose someone who's part of the Chevy camp. And, of course, Justin Allgaier is part of that Chevy camp. He's been there for like a decade at this point, and he has a lot of experience. He's been there for like 15 or 20 years at this point. So I think that having that experience with someone who's been in this series for a long time, motorsports for a long time, it makes a lot of sense. Again, it'd been cool to see Carl Edwards get the chance, but I think Justin Allgaier is the perfect choice. And I think he's a very solid choice for that ride for the All-Star weekend. If Larson, again, has traveling issues on Sunday, he is committed to running the All-Star main event. But if he does have issues, Justin Allgaier will start the event, and it won't affect Larson, especially for playoff eligibility at this moment. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chicagoland Speedway. Now, throughout the last couple of weeks, we have talked a lot about Chicagoland Speedway on this channel because earlier this month, or at the beginning of the month, there was, of course, a little bit of a Q&A that Jordan Bianchi was doing, and there was a lot of talk and conversations for him that he has heard behind the scenes that Chicagoland could potentially host a NASCAR Cup Series day for the first time since 2019 in 2026. There's a lot of unknown rumors about Chicago Street Course that we're going to talk about here in just a second. But earlier this week, I think it was reported by someone named Courtney, I'm pretty sure, he or she, they posted a little bit of something on their page showing that the website has been updated recently and had been updated in the last year or so, talking about new events that could be coming soon. And Jared Lundberg, a.k.a. the Iceberg, or Ice Titan on YouTube, he basically confirmed that they've done some new things and there's a new Turn 4 terrace that has been built there. Now, Breakard did a little bit of investigating on basically going back to the Wayback Machine, and apparently the page has been the same since December 27th. But the fact it's been since December 27th and you don't go back to September and it's different, that tells me that there is a lot of talk about this. Now, why is there a lot of talk about Chicagoland Speedway potentially making a comeback in 2026? Well, this is the final year of the Chicago Street Course, and they're in their last year of the contract. And from what a lot of people have been seeing in the industry right now, it sounds like there's a lot of people that do believe that the Chicago Street Course will likely not be back on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule in 2026. They could sign a 1 or 2 year extension. They do have that opportunity to sign through 2027, but many people do believe that this is going to be the last year of that event. There's been rumors of San Diego potentially hosting a street race in 2026 also, but it sounds like that's not happening for 26. So what a lot of people are theorizing is that Chicagoland, at least for 2026, could be a stopgap year before they do go to San Diego in 2027. If Chicagoland is going to be back on the schedule in 2026, I am going to be very, very happy about this. I think Chicagoland is one of the best tracks in NASCAR. It would have done some great racing regardless of the package. The 550, which was one of the worst packages NASCAR ever had, it raced really good in 2019. The 750 package had in 2018. The racing was great there. 2014 had a lot of great moments as well. And over years, Chicagoland has put on great racing. And I think one of the reasons is because of the worn-out surface. I think if they don't repave the surface, they haven't repaved in like 25 years, I think you'd be able to put on a fantastic product. Now, obviously, tires would be eaten up very quickly like they used to be at Rockingham many years ago. But I think that Chicagoland absolutely 100% should be on the schedule. Chicagoland is a fantastic racetrack. Yes, they've got a lot of amenities they need to update, and there's no denying, there's no question about that. If they can get the amenities updated at the track, I think that would be really, really big. But I think many people want to see it on the track. And a lot of people say, well, what about Kentucky? Personally, Kentucky, no. The racing in Kentucky would not be good. I know people think that it would be as good as Chicagoland because they have a worn-out surface. But you have people that actually care. And one of the reasons why I think there's a lot of legitimacy to this is based on the fact that you have a lot of people that they're hiring a lot of people out at that track, and there's a lot of people that do care that want to be there. So, and plus you have events that are happening. The Route 66 Dragway has been opened up recently as well. So I think there's a lot of smoke to this. There's not a ton of fire right now, but the fact there's more talk and conversations about Chicagoland happening, I think there's a lot of truth to this, and I think it's very likely that it is going to be announced not too far down the road that Chicagoland will be making a return to the NASCAR Cup Series schedule in 26. I think it's going to be one of the only new or old tracks coming on the schedule next year, but I think Chicago will be on the schedule in 2026, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about RFK Racing. As it was officially announced earlier today, and we talked about this on the channel earlier today, but it was announced that RFK Racing has been handed some pretty massive penalties earlier today. It was announced and reported by Bob Pockers and many reporters in the industry that Chris Buescher and RFK Racing have been handed L1 penalties. It's a 60-point penalty, and Scott Grace has been suspended for the next 2 races. He's suspended for the All-Star race, and he's also suspended for the Coca-Cola 600 as well. He also was fined $75,000, and 5 playoff points have been taken away, meaning that if Chris Buescher is to win a race, those points will be nullified and would go back to 0 instead of being at -5. Now, what were the things that they violated? Well, according to what was reported from the R&D Center, they violated the front bumper cover rule. And apparently there's 2 inches of the fascia in front of the car that you basically are allotted to basically in there. I think that's extra weight, I'm pretty sure. I'm not entirely sure. But they had basically been only allotted 2 inches, and apparently they might have had more than the 2 inches they were given and allotted. Bozy Tadarevich did a really good breakdown on this on Twitter. I suggest going to check that out for more information on that. But this is still a really big deal because Chris Buescher goes from being 33 points above the cutoff line in 14th for the standings to dropping to 24th in the points, 27 points below the cutoff line. That means his teammate Ryan Preece moves from being below the cutoff line up to being above by 14 points above the cutoff line, while Kyle Busch goes from basically being 20 or 30 points back to being only 7 points below the cutoff line currently at the moment. For Chris Buescher, he is only 27 points back in 24th in the standings. Now, I've seen a lot of people saying that Chris Buescher is in a must-win situation. I do have to actually disagree with this. Look, I think 27 points back is not the most ideal thing. But I don't think 27 points is the end of the season. He can make up 27 points at the Coast 600 alone. And while the RFK cars have not been as strong as they were like in 2023 for that matter, I do think Chris Buescher has the speed to get back in there in points. And I think he'd definitely make up the thing. Now, obviously, there's a lot of road course races coming up. You're going to have guys like Shane Van Gisbergen and AJ Allmendinger. They're going to be strong at tracks like Chicago, at tracks like Mexico. We got to remember that Chris Buescher is also a really good road course racer. Remember, his only win last year was at Watkins Glen. But why is this significant for RFK? Well, obviously, RFK Racing, they've been affected by a lot of penalties recently. You think about what's been happening to this organization and this team. Go back to a couple weeks ago. Ryan Preece got handed a disqualification for having 3 shims on the back of the spoiler instead of having the 2 shims on the back that are required. He got disqualified, went from finishing second to finishing back. Now, obviously, he's recovered now because he's in the playoffs. Then you think about Broc Keselowski. Broc Keselowski's had an abysmal season in 2025. He is having a career low in every statistical category. No wins, no top 5s, no top 10s, 3 top 20s, and 6 finishes of 26 or worse this year. And he's had a lot of DNS, and he's having a career low average finish, and I don't believe he's even led a single lap this year. He had the speed to win at Kansas, but they were messing with the air pressures, and unfortunately they ended up crashing out. And now you've got Chris Buescher, the only one who really hasn't been affected by penalties this year, and now he's got affected by a big penalty. Now, there's also a lot of talk whether this team is going to appeal. RFK Racing did actually release a statement earlier today. I did not get to cover this on the channel, but RFK Racing did release in a statement that they are going to take a look at the situation. They've acknowledged that they have been penalized. They are going to take a look at it, and they'll make a decision whether or not they are going to appeal it or not. Realistically, I think there is a chance they could appeal this, but I also think there's a chance they may not appeal this. We know that NASCAR could make some changes and they could go ahead and see a win. We saw, of course, with Chase Briscoe earlier this year. They got handed a really big penalty after he won the pole for the Daytona 500. They appealed it and they went on to win. But you think about RFK. This team's been handed a lot of penalties in the next-gen era. We go back to 2022. Broc Keselowski was the first driver to be handed a massive L1 or L2 penalty after Atlanta in 2022, after he got a top 10 finish at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Then later that year in Martinsville, he got handed a disqualification for something, I believe, in the weight, I'm pretty sure, of the car. So RFK Racing is no secret. This team, they haven't had as much speed as they had in recent years, but I think they're trying to find any sort of advantage as possible. NASCAR does not want these teams messing with these next-gen parts and messing with the next-gen cars. But I feel like we've been seeing a lot more of teams getting in trouble, especially this year alone. Of course, we've had the situation with Chase Briscoe originally. We've had the Chris Buescher thing with the L1 penalty. RFK with their disqualification from Talladega. Same thing with Joey Logano. We've seen also this year Eric Jones get disqualified for not having enough minimum weight. We've seen the Xfinity Series this year with Jesse Love, where he won Rocky, but he got disqualified for, I think, something in the spoiler or the weight, I'm pretty sure, and the roofing was something in the rear trailing arm mount, I'm pretty sure. We've all seen Parker Kligerman. He got suspended for too little or too much weight in the car. And then we also saw Lane Riggs get disqualified for something in the bed cover of the truck recently. I think these teams are getting comfortable with messing with these parts, but I also think it's leading to a lot of sloppiness in the sport currently at the moment. So I think the big question now we wait for, is RFK going to appeal it? realistically, I think there's definitely a chance they could appeal it. I don't think a team has been had any sort of big penalty on this kind of stuff for sure. So we're just going to have to wait and see. But if you mess with these parts, and NASCAR has been pretty clear about that, you're probably going to be handed some pretty big penalties. So we'll have to wait and see what happens if RFK does go ahead and appeal for Chris Buescher. But as of right now, I'm kind of leaning toward maybe not. Now, for this weekend, Doug Randolph is going to be the crew chief. That was announced earlier today. Doug Randolph has a lot of experience in the Cup Series, experience being a crew chief in trucks, and was a crew chief for Brad Keselowski's team in the Truck Series many years ago. So they have someone experienced that is going to be behind the box and calling the shots. And now we're going to head on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Broc Feeney, Will Brown, and Cam Waters. As it has been reported by Adam Stern in Auto Auction earlier today that it sounds like all three of these drivers will be racing at some point in NASCAR in 2025. As reported by Adam Stern, all three of these drivers are talking to teams about racing in NASCAR in the 2025 season. Let's begin by first talking about Will Brown. It has been reported by Adam Stern that Will Brown is expected to join Kaulig Racing at the Chicago Street Course in a third Cup Series car for the team. It is expected that he will likely drive the number 13 car. They, of course, had the 13 car ran last year for Shane Van Gisbergen at the Charlotte Roval, where Shane Van Gisbergen actually won the pole and had one of the fastest cars in the field, but finished around 6 or 7 because he lost some of the handling and lost some speed. They also did run this car for AJ Allmendinger last year at the Circuit of America's track. He actually finished in the top 10 and ran very, very well. Meanwhile, Cam Waters, who also is expected to make some starts in NASCAR this year, he will be likely driving for either RFK Racing or he will go ahead and drive for Rick Ware Racing in the number 15 car. Will probably be a fourth RFK machine, might be associated with the Rick Ware Racing team, considering RFK and Rick Ware do have some association. I actually do think that this is one of the big announcements that is coming from RFK Racing at their announcement next week. And finally, something we talked about on the channel about a month or so ago, but Broc Feeney is working on a deal to race with Kaulig Racing in some select Xfinity Series race in 2025. It sounds like it may not only be a one-off start for Broc Feeney, but also might be a two-off start for the team as well. This is a really big deal. We've been seeing more drivers from Australia that have come over and race in NASCAR. We've already seen 4 drivers from the Australian circuit or New Zealand come over and race. Obviously, Shane Van Gisbergen, the most successful one. Shane Van Gisbergen, of course, won 3 Repco Supercar Championships and has already won 3 Xfinity Series races and has a Cup Series win back in 2023. Yes, Shane has, of course, struggled in Cup this year, but Shane is a very talented driver, and we know he's going to be really strong at the road courses. And let's be real, had it not been for some issues last year with Chase Briscoe basically being a pinball, I think there's a good chance that he goes out there and wins. All 3 of these guys are very, very talented. Broc Feeney is currently, I believe, second in the championship, finished second last year, and won a lot of races. And he's only 22 years old. We got to keep that in mind. He is very, very talented. And being associated with SVG, that does make a lot of sense. We'll get to all 3 drivers and talk about the possibilities here. Will Brown was originally supposed to drive for Richard Childress Racing for a couple races. One of those races was the Chicago Street Course, but with Austin announcing that he was going to drive the 33 car at Chicago, that deal I think fell through. This course has a lot of deals with the AAA engineering program over there, and Will Brown obviously is really good in supercars. I think he's won some championships, I'm pretty sure, but he's also won a lot of races over there. And Will Brown, he ran a one-off start in the NASCAR Cup Series last year at Sonoma, and he was really fast in the event, had top 5, top 10 speed. But unfortunately for Will Brown, they had electrical gremlins, and they fell out of the race early. Cam Waters made a couple starts in the Craftsman Truck Series last year with Thorsport Racing. He unfortunately had some issues in the event, but Cam Waters did show some really good speed, and he actually was one of the fastest cars at Sonoma, very similar to Will Brown. I think with that experience of racing street races, I think that could benefit Cam Waters in a really big way. Plus, I think RFK Racing's or Rick Ware Race equipment has actually been really good at road courses. You think about how strong Chris Buescher's been, and I even think that Brad Keselowski in the last year or so, he's gotten better road courses, even though Brad Keselowski has generally really had a bad season this year. And Broc Feeney, of course, really, really good guy at road courses. And we're hearing he's going to run the Xfinity race, and I think that is a big deal. If he's running the Xfinity race at Chicago, he is going to be one of the favorites in that event. But I think there's some other guys that are going to be fast. You are going to have Connor Zilisch, one of the best road course races we have ever seen in NASCAR history. The guy's won 2 road course races, the 2 that he's entered, and has been really good in other series as well. And was really fast at COTA in the Cup Series in his debut with the Red Bull colors, but unfortunately got caught up in the crash with Daniel Suarez, the guy he might be replacing next year in 2026. And then you think about Shane Van Gisbergen. Shane Van Gisbergen, this is one of the 4 starts he has scheduled in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year. We know that he is going to be a major, major factor to win that event. He's the favorite to win. He won the race last year in the Xfinity Series. And of course, like I mentioned, he won the Cup race in 2023. But I think Broc will be up there with those guys. I think you're also going to have some other Cup guys entering that event. And think about the Cup field too. If you got all these guys entering the Cup race, like Cam Waters, and of course you have Will Brown as well, you're going to have some guys going home because Corey Heim is running the Cup race. He's going to drive the 67 car, and he was really good. You're going to have, I believe, Josh Lee, from what I've heard, is going to drive the race there as well. You're also probably going to have some other road course guys showing up. And you think about the Xfinity race there, there's probably going to be a lot of guys racing in that event. And I think one of the reasons why you are seeing so many drivers come from Australia and races one, they've seen a lot of success of Shane Van Gisbergen, but I think they also know that at least for 26, there's a very likely possibility, we talk about Chicagoland, but there's a very likely possibility that this is going to be the last year, at least for now, of a street course event in NASCAR, and I think they want to come out and try it because it might be their only opportunity to go out there and be very, very competitive. But what's so exciting about this is more drivers from Australia coming over because the next-gen car is very similar in a sense, and they took a lot of the stuff from the GT3 cars that Supercars uses currently at the moment. So I do think that that's why you're seeing a lot of these drivers come over from Australia and New Zealand as well. And I don't think these are going to be the last guys you are going to see. And I think that if we see Broc come in, he'll probably be sponsored by Red Bull. But I think this is such a big deal because I like seeing this crossover. In fact, there's a lot of talk right now that a couple current Cup champions might be going over there in Adelaide. Where Kyle Busch was working on a deal to go over there in 2024. That deal fell through because of the team that he was going to drive for, of course. And then you think about Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson is in massive talks and conversations to run the Supercar event in Adelaide. He'll miss the Turkey Night Grand Prix, of course, if that does end up happening. But it sounds like he's in major talks right now to go and run that Supercar event. To me, this crossover is so important for motorsports in general because we need to see crossover like this. I know some people aren't biggest fans of it, but I think crossover is really important for the growth of the sport long term. And I'm very excited about this because I love seeing that we're probably going to get some growth in NASCAR and more drivers from Supercars racing. I think this is a big win if this does happen, in my honest opinion. So, that is going to be today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. How excited are you to see you guys like Will Brown, Broc Feeney, and Cam Waters coming over to race in Chicago? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about RFK Racing getting handed a pretty massive penalty? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later today on the channel, you're going to be seeing the paint scheme video for the All-Star race, and we might be doing reactions to the Car Store race, but I'm probably not going to be doing reactions to that. We're also not going to be doing reactions to the Cup Series qualifying session, so there won't be any videos on that this week. We are going to do reactions to the Heat race tomorrow. We'll talk about the Heat races and get those out as well, and we're also going to have the Truck Series race view on Saturday as well, so some exciting stuff around that. And if Larson doesn't make the top 12, we will do a video on Larson as well and wherever he qualifies. Also on Sunday, we're going to have the race review and a Kyle Larson video coming out as well. Maybe a Shane Van Gisbergen video as well. We got content coming out, people like Haley Deegan, Shane Van Gisbergen, Cars, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, Ross Chastain, Cletus Farm, Matt Benedum, Frankie Muniz, Carson Quaffle, Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed, you name it. We'll talk about all those people in the coming days and weeks as time progresses and goes on. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, buddy.